Welcome to the Braver Leaders podcast, the space where bold conversations meet real leadership. I'm Sam Harvey, founder of Braver Leaders, and I spend my days helping leaders and teams cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters: behavior change. On this podcast, I bring you unfiltered conversations with experts who are driving real change: executives, entrepreneurs, professors, coaches, and culture shakers. We dive into the human side of leadership, the stuff that truly makes a difference. High-performance teams, culture shifts, tough conversations, vulnerability, and impact. We're getting stuck in. If that's your thing, hit subscribe, share this with a fellow leader, and check out braverleaders.com for our free resources, because leadership is not a solo sport. Let's do this. Welcome back to the Braver Leaders podcast. I am Sam Harvey, your host, and today I am joined by the wonderful Katie Maycock, somebody who I met in London, who I really look up to in terms of your levels of knowledge on stress. She is a public speaker. She's going to introduce herself far better than I can, and has a brilliant business called Get Your Shit Together. Katie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. You've done a pretty good job at introducing me, but essentially what I do is I work with corporate executives, corporate companies, helping them understand the impact that stress has on their organization and what you can do about it to make sure people are performing at a high level. So that's essentially what I do.
Yeah, nice. Love that. And you've got, I actually didn't say that I was going to say this to you, but I'd love to if it's all right. You've got a pretty interesting story that leads up to this, haven't
Yeah,
you? Can we go there? Can we talk about that? Because I mean, the
100%.
Braver Leaders does what it says on the tin. We get a little bit vulnerable. Are you happy to share your story?
100%. I can start wherever you want me to start. So ask away.
Go for it. Yeah, tell us how you got to where you are, and kind of what the story was that led you to championing this, I guess.
Yeah, so I I always say I had the very fortunate experience of burning out twice before I was 27. And the reason why I say 20, like I was fortunate, was because I burnt out at such a young age that I could figure out what was wrong and fix it before I got too far down the garden path.
Got it.
But essentially what happened was in my mid 20s, and this was just the outcome. It all kind of proceeded before that. But essentially, I burnt out twice, once when I was 25 and again when I was 27. I was working in recruitment. I don't blame recruitment. I don't blame the agency. I don't blame the companies that I worked for.
Yeah.
Essentially, what I had done was I'd put so much pressure on myself to perform at such a high level that it was unsustainable. And so I got used to working 12, 14, 16-hour days without really thinking about it. I would push myself to the brink. I was, constantly on, and I never really switched off. And I didn't really know what was going on. I had subtle signs of stomach issues. I was getting cold sores all the time. I was starting to just feel unwell, but I never really took it seriously until it really got to a point where I had spent around 30,000 Australian dollars trying to figure out what was wrong with me by going to private doctors because my health was so bad. And every time I was going to the doctor, they were like, have you just thought that you're a bit stressed? Like, have you just tried not stressing? And I didn't really understand, although I should have, because I do have a degree in nutrition and physiology. So I really should understand the impact that stress had on the body, but I didn't. But I really didn't understand how at 25, 27, I was struggling with, digesting food. I was struggling with joint pain. I was struggling with just aches and pains consistently. And then on top of that, I started to become really forgetful. I was really struggling to concentrate in meetings. And when it got to the point where I realized something was really, really, really wrong, was in my second burnout. I woke up one day, I got up, and it was just such a struggle. Like I felt really like, okay, I've got to get up, I've got to get a coffee. And it felt so overwhelming just to do that. And then I went to the office, I was in meetings all day, and I remember just sitting in a meeting going, I can see this person's mouth moving. I can
Mm.
hear that there's noises going on. Like I can hear that they're speaking, but I have no idea what they've said. Every meeting I walked out of going, I have no idea what I meant to action. I have no idea what I heard. I have no idea what the expectation of me was in that meeting. And that was terrifying to me because I'd always prided myself on working really well under pressure. I was really good at throwing myself into in the deep end and performing at a
Mm.
high level.
Mm.
And I didn't understand what was going on. And when I look back now, although I still to this day will say I thrive really, really well under pressure, stress, all that kind of stuff. But what had happened was I'd created such unsustainable habits and unsustainable foundations that I constantly tried to work at 100%, 100% of the time, which is unrealistic. And, after I'd done that twice, I look back and I look back even to when I was a kid. We were just talking about this before we started recording. I was finishing my double degree and I launched my business in my final year of university. I was going to university 40 hours a week, then working 40 hours a week, if not longer, then scaling it, then hiring people and doing all that and not realizing that was quite a lot to take on. So that's essentially what happened. And then after the second time I burnt out, I realized I'm not the only person that, has a toxic relationship with stress. So let's figure out how I can help other people do it. And I think, something I learned was that we've normalized stress and we've normalized a lot of the physical impact that stress has on us and have just sort of gone, oh, just get over it. You'll be right. Just get a good night's sleep and you'll be right. And it's more than that.
I think we've almost glamorized stress, don't you think? It goes beyond normalized. It's like this, if you're not hustling, like that whole hustle culture, right? Like if you're not working extremely hard and doing, getting up in the morning and doing 100 push-ups and, meditating and then, blah, 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 all of these things in the day, then you're not doing something right. And I think the anxious overachievers that are listening will relate to this, right? Because that's clearly what you fall into. I definitely do as well, right? This kind of need to, like, I'm anxious. I've got to make sure that and we could get into this whole dialogue about where that comes from. But let's talk. I'm quite interested in this. So you spent a lot of time over the wrong side of the stress curve, right? Like in distress, the new stress. And like, so I love that you kind of mentioned you were forgetting things. I mean, don't love it because that's terrible and shit, I'm sorry. But, that that's what happens, right? Flight of ideas, insomnia, and it's a slippery slope into anxiety and depression, all that kind of thing, isn't it? But I'm really interested because I don't know this stuff, like around what's the physiology, what's happening then? When you've actually got yourself to that point that you're overflowing, you're over the point of flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So if you look at the bell curve, so if you look at a bell curve and you can look at the pressure performance curve, right? And I love using the pressure performance curve. So you've got the left-hand side, which is there's not enough pressure for somebody to perform. So they don't have the right resources that they need to perform or whatever. Then you've got the middle part, which is you've got all the right resources, you're working really, really well, and you're actually working really, really, really well under pressure. And that's where I thought I was 100% at all times. Like I thought that's where I'm at when I'm working 16-hour days for the last 4 months. But realistically, what I was doing was tipping over to the right-hand side, which is where stress was now working against me, not for me. And so when you look at the physiology of what stress does to the body, I focus on 3 key areas. One's a bit cheeky because it kind of can filter off into all the different areas. But essentially, you've got to think about stress as the fight or flight response. So most of us have heard of the fight or flight response, which is essentially an automatic physiological response to a perceived threat or a perceived stress. Now, you might perceive that stress as a positive, but you have to action it, but your body doesn't know that it's like, we're not running away, or, we don't know that. It's just our brain's telling us you're okay, but the body's still reacting in a way that's still stress. So that's where there's a bit of a problem. Like you can perceive it as a positive, but your body's going to go, okay, cool, but we're still in the fight or flight response. And what's happening during that time is certain things are getting switched on and certain things are getting switched off. So the things that are switched on, you've got your hormones. So you've got your cortisol, your adrenaline, and they're actually not a bad thing. I think we demonize them. You go on Instagram and you're like, do a cortisol detox. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? You've got those things, but we need those things for survival, and they are really, really important, especially in the fight or flight response. They're important, sleep, waking up, and all that kind of jazz. So they all get turned on. But what happens is what we want to focus on is the things that get switched off. So I talk about the three things. The first one I talk about is gut health. So although my business name is Get Your Shit Together, and there's a little tiny tagline after that, which is literally and figuratively. So although I talk a lot about stress, the reason why I talk a lot about stress is I was a gut health specialist for a long period of time when I was a nutritionist. Oh, I'm still a nutritionist. I'm still a gut health specialist, but I thought that was my key area. And what you look at is your body has stress has such a profound impact on your digestive system, simply because if your body's perceiving that you're running away from a lion, tiger, or a bear or anything like that, if we go back to, when we're hunter and gatherers, it takes an enormous amount of energy and an enormous amount of blood flow to digest food. So you've got this big blood, a blood source and, going to the digestive tract. But realistically, at that point in time, if you're running away from a lion, tiger, or bear, or whatever it is, the blood flows away from your digestive tract, going to your arms and legs, so you can run away or fight that potential threat, which is really, really important. So we do need that. The dilemma that what we're talking about is in the short term, that's not a problem. So if you run away and you're back into safety and you relax, your body's like, oh, okay, cool, I can go back and digest that sandwich now. It's not a huge issue. When we're consistently under stress, which a lot of people are, and this is why we're seeing huge issues to digestive systems and gut health and things like that. And that's why there was a huge push in the last, 15, 20 years around gut health in the nutrition world. This is the biggest reason why, because if you're not digesting food, it's going to have a really profound impact going forward. So we've seen huge increases in IBS, allergies, intolerances, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, all of that kind of stuff. And so many people are struggling with this. Either you yourself or somebody you know is going to have a gut health issue. I guarantee you that you know somebody or you're struggling yourself. And that's just one way. And if you think about it, if you're not digesting food, you're not absorbing nutrients, you're becoming deficient, you're not getting what you need to function as a normal human being. So that's just, there's that there. And this could come in the form of, vitamin deficiencies. This can come in the form of IBS, bloating, like severe stomach issues. I had severe stomach issues. Like it got to the point where I was allergic to literally everything. And it's got to the point where it's like, what can I eat? It's like, drink some water and eat some air. It's like amazing. So that's one thing. The second thing that we've got to look at, which is what gets switched off, is our immune system. And again, it comes down to the need when we're feeling stressed out. Our body, if we're releasing these stress hormones, so the cortisol and the adrenaline, our body thinks we're running away from a potential threat. And in the short term, that's fine. So what it does is it switches off our immune system. So if we're running away from a potential threat and we come across like a virus, a bacteria, or a fungi, or any type of infection, our body will go, do you know what? Come inside us, and we don't need to do anything about it right now because we don't have the resources or the energy to deal with it.
Got it.
And so in the short term, not a problem. The minute you relax, your body is going to have that immune response and it's going to flush out that infection or bacteria, whatever it is. If you're under stress for a prolonged period of time, your immune system shuts down, and so you allow all of these like bugs, infections, whatever it is to come in, but your body's not responding to it. So the way to think of it, and to sort of, if you want to do a bit of a litmus test with yourself, think about a time when you've worked really, really hard through the year and you're working hard to maybe take a break. Maybe you're going on holidays and you've got to pull some long hours to try and get that done. And then you think about a time when you've done that, you've gone on your holidays. What happens on the first couple of days of that holiday? You get sick.
You get sick.
You get sick.
Yeah,
that's what's happening.
You spend a week essentially winding down, right? And then I often talk about this actually, is like, have you ever been on a 2-week holiday and then you get to the second week and you're like, oh, I'm finally relaxed.
Or you're finally feeling a little bit better, or the aches and pains have gone, you're finally getting a good night's sleep, all that kind of stuff. This is the same thing. And so what happens is you finally relax and your body goes, oh, we have all the space and the resources and the energy now to fight these infections, these viruses, or whatever it is. And that's why you get sick. And that's just a small example. But you do it for a long period of time, your body is going to go, I can't keep doing this. We need to start fighting these, infections that's going on in the body. And what we can find is that it can be really challenging to overcome illnesses. You might get illnesses that that you might not get at a young age. So for instance, I had the shingles 4 times before I was 25, which
Wow.
is insane. Like you
Yeah,
shouldn't be
yeah.
getting that.
No.
You can get really vague health issues as well during this. So there's a lot that goes into it. Now, the third one, which is the cheeky one, because it can spread into so many different areas. Whereas what happens if you are under stress for a prolonged period of time? And again, guys, we're talking prolonged period of time. We're not talking about I've had a really stressful day, so therefore my immune system's shot to hell and I have no digestive system. No, that's not it. We're talking that really prolonged stress. We're talking months, if not years, where this can
Mm.
really play a role, which is that dysregulation of the inflammatory response. And so what we see is obviously immunity and inflammation are very uniquely connected.
Mm.
So, but what can happen is if you're under stress for a prolonged period of time, your body can produce like inflammatory responses to really, inflammatory responses throughout the body where it shouldn't have. So do you remember the trope back in the day where probably when we were growing up where it was like, we heard that 40-year-old lawyer who worked so many hours and would just kind of drop dead from a heart attack. Do you remember that kind of trope around that was always this really
I
working
mean,
class man?
I know somebody who did that.
Okay, there you go. It's
Like
still
he
it's
was he was 42 and he had a massive job. He wasn't a lawyer, but he had a massive job. Died.
yeah, exactly. Like high execs, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. That's from inflammation. It's
Yeah.
because you're having an inflammatory response at an
Mm.
inappropriate time.
Mm.
And you've got to think about inflammation is linked to every single lifestyle disease. So diabetes, obesity, heart
Mm.
disease,
Mm.
cancer, everything that you can think of is linked to inflammation. And this is why they say stress is the number one killer. It is linked to so many health issues. It
Got it.
impacts so much of the body. Then
Mm.
that's why people get sick. And that's why I say I'm so fortunate at the age of 27 that I was able to rectify those health issues or at least manage them a bit better so I wasn't suffering.
Love that. Thank you.
I know
I
that
think
was really long-winded.
it wasn't. It was perfect. And what it's done is scared the shit out of everybody because that's the point.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, like this is a topic which I'm very passionate about as well. And I think I often share the story that I just shared about a guy I knew who died at 42, right?
Mhm.
And the point is it's supposed to be scary because nobody's really taking it seriously and everybody's addicted to this kind of I feel good, I'm in flow, but actually you're not. You're spending way too much time over the other side of that performance curve, right?
Yeah.
And I think um, I really like the part you said about it's not realistic that we actually go on these cortisol detoxes because cortisol is a necessary part of us surviving. Every
Yeah.
day we get a shot of cortisol when we wake up, right?
Yeah.
That's the first hormone release we get at each day. Well, one of the first, right? Um,
Hmm.
and we get a dopamine shot then too, and it tails off after lunch, right? And you can prolong it a bit with
Hmm.
caffeine, etc., etc. But the point is, like, we're not trying to actually get rid of these things. We're just actually trying to manage our up and down a bit more, right? Is
But
that right?
yeah, we're trying to work with it, not against it,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And
Tell me
I
more.
think when you're in the fight or flight response, or if you're under stress, right?
Mm-mm.
Um, there is an element where there is a time where this is when we're talking about the optimum performance, right? That's when you have motivation. You are in the flow state. You can concentrate more.
Yeah.
You are more alert. You have more
Yes.
energy. All of those things are true. And don't get me wrong, it's very addictive because you get a lot of work done and you achieve a lot. And then we spend the rest of the time trying to stay in that. So we'll put more pressure on ourselves to try and replicate that feeling consistently. So whether it's pressure on ourselves or whether this is something else that happens as well. So this happened to me. And again, I'm not blaming the company. It was probably something that they weren't aware of what I was doing and how I was working. But you achieve a goal. So what do? They move the goalpost. And so then
Yes.
I've got internal pressure and then I've got external pressure that I'm going, okay, I was a bit of a perfectionist, like probably still am, still a smidge. My
But geez,
manager
mate.
is probably the problem. Um, but that's sort of what a lot of people are doing. So
Yeah.
if we want to try and stick in that middle part, but if we we need the right resources to stick into that middle part. And to have those right resources, we need to give ourselves time to rest. We need to give ourselves time to grow and develop. We need that space. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to consistently be in that stage. And it's like, well, that's just not realistic.
Well, it's an addiction response, isn't it? And the reason I laughed
Yes.
as you were saying that is that I don't know if you know. I think you know this about me. I'm not sure, but so I'm in recovery, and I share this quite regularly on this podcast, right? So that's actually was kind of the nexus of Braver Leaders was me sharing that and going, oh,
Hmm.
whoa, people didn't tell me that I was a loser and get away from me. It was like actually, thanks for sharing, dude. Like, are you okay?
Yeah.
And so that kind of vulnerability is anyway. That's where that's where it came from, but the point being that like um what you're talking about there is I'm chasing that high.
Yeah.
I'm literally going, that feeling, right? And so from my background of that, I was like, I
Mhm.
know that feeling very well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
It
um
doesn't work. And I think there is an addiction to that, especially with high achievers.
yeah,
So, I mean, I can go into the law of burnout if you want. But high achievers are the ones that typically burn out. They're the ones that putting themselves more at
yeah,
risk of burnout because there's a whole, we could go into the psychology of it, and I can talk about the psychology of the clients that I've got, what the common theme is. But realistically, they are chasing something and they're also running away from something. So that's typically how this works.
mm,
And it is
that's
addictive. It is addictive because when you're working at a high level, what happens? You feel good because you're achieving. So you get that dopamine, you get that that serotonin and you get all of the really good things, right? That are all really rewarding, all that kind of stuff. And then what else happens? You get the positive reinforcement from other people. You go, oh, you're doing a really good job. And so this is where becomes quite dangerous, where everyone's like, oh, you're doing such a good job. Keep it up, keep going. And you're like, oh, I'm just treading water here, but I'm making it look real easy and it's really not.
yeah, yeah, that's a bit Pavlovian, isn't it?
It's a
Because
bit
you
Pavlovian, but it's
all of a
also I don't
sudden
want to disappoint people.
yeah, yeah, but you get that look, I've got a reward. I'm going to do that again, right? And so
Hmm.
yeah, when you there's I was going to say when you couple that with the anxious overachiever, the Pavlovianness. I don't know if that's a very good adjective. Um, and then actually, I think the third and probably maybe the most important here is the huge pressure you put on yourself and people put on themselves
Hmm.
for this kind of perfectionism, right? And it is, I mean, we've talked a bit, and I did a podcast with a lady named Charlotte Spurway a few episodes ago about
Hmm.
attachment styles in the workplace, right? And so bringing anxiety, people who've got an anxious attachment style into the workplace are going, I have to people please, I have to make sure that I get everything perfect, I have to. It's like this kind of response to I've got to make sure
Hmm.
everything's good. When you bring that in as well, um, uh, man, you've got a cocktail there, haven't you?
Yeah, I remember with one of the jobs that I worked at, I always had a smile on my face and I always had the best energy where I'd come and be like, hey guys, even if I was screaming inside, even if I'd only slept an hour, no one knew that I was struggling. I
Mm,
masked it really well because I didn't want anyone else to know. I didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't want to be the bubbly person. I didn't want to be the driven person. I didn't want anyone to see me anything other than being bubbly, driven,
mm, mm,
helpful, um, you know, a high achiever. I didn't want to be seen as anything else.
mm.
And that was quite dangerous. And I really didn't want to disappoint any manager. Like I would go above and beyond, like above and way beyond from what would have been expected of me. And I did it in every role that I ever had.
Yeah, got it. Okay. I want to come back to something that you were talking about before, and it's just the flight or fight response. And
Hmm.
you were kind of talking about the fact that we're not actually running away, are we? We're just kind of we think we are, but we're actually there is no saber-toothed tiger anymore. It's just
Yes.
somebody giving us a task, and something that the animal kingdom are very good at is if they are flight or fight, they have a somatic response which is shaking, right? And we don't do
Hmm.
that.
No.
Some people will do. Some people will cry or shake or whatever if they've got a
Yeah.
big like traumatic thing. But for the most part, we're putting ourselves under this very traumatic stressful situation, which we've kind of become addicted to, but we're not kind of seeing it
We're not
through.
going through the loop, right? If
Yeah.
you think
Yeah.
about it, if you simplest way to look at it, the most natural thing that happens when you're having a stress response
Yeah.
is, you've got fight, flight, or freeze, and we can talk about
Yeah.
freeze in a second.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I actually
fawn as well now, right?
and fawn. I feel like
Yeah.
we've just overcomplicated stuff a little bit these days, but let's simplify it. So we've got the fight or flight response, and we'll talk about freeze in a second. So I'll put freeze to the side for a second. I'll come back to it. But you think about it, you come across a saber-toothed tiger, your body automatically responds. You're not consciously aware of what's going on. You're not consciously sitting there looking at it. I'm like, that's a saber-toothed tiger. And because you don't want to sit there and go, could I make this my friend? Like, is it going to, you don't want that. You need your body to have that automatic response so it can prime itself to run away or fight that threat. What would happen when we're hunter and gatherers? We would physically run away, or we would, physically fight back if we were, wanted to do that. And what would happen? There would be an outcome. The outcome would be we feel safe. We would have fought that potential threat off, or we'd be dead, right? So then they were the three outcomes, or we would freeze.
Either way,
right?
solved.
Either way, there's a really clear resolution. A really, really clear resolution. Freeze is a little different. So the best way I can describe it, let's say you're in a cave and a saber-toothed tiger comes in and you're like, I can't run away or fight this threat. So what happens is your body goes into freeze, which is it lowers all of those responses down. So you kind of start breathing slower, your heart rate lowers, everything lowers. And think of it as playing dead.
Playing dead, yeah, totally.
Playing dead. It's like, if I don't move, if I don't do anything, I'm gonna be okay. So there's that. Again, there's going to be an outcome there. There is an outcome. What we fast forward to modern day society, you go find me a time in the corporate world where you can physically run away, fight, or freeze. I mean, people do freeze, and we can look at that in a second, but where it's actually a good response in the workplace, it's not, but we're still using the same hormones to try and get us from point A to point B. You could argue, well, there is a result because I'm achieving something, but that achievement isn't the result, right? It's just going to add more pressure, especially if you're a high achiever or an anxious achiever. You're going to achieve it. You're not going to acknowledge that you've achieved it. You've got to go, well, I've done that now. Well, I've got to go do this.
Yeah.
So it's never ending. And that's why we see this cycle of people who push themselves really hard, they achieve what they need to achieve, and then they typically burn out. And then what will happen is they'll take a bit of a break, whether that's a sabbatical or whether that's, whatever. I don't think you can't, no, I know you can't overcome burnout in 2 weeks. But you might take a sabbatical, you might do what you need to do, and then come back into the workplace, do the exact same thing. So we see cyclical burnout happen in high achievers because they've not resolved the core problem, which is they've not understood how to work with stress, rather they're fighting against it, essentially.
Yeah, okay,
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely does. So talk to me about what burnout looks like, because I think it's a word which is used kind of interchangeably now, or a lot, or I'm burnt out. You'll hear, right? So what does it actually look like?
So I'm going to openly disagree with the World Health Organization.
Nice.
So I'm going to tell you how I view burnout, and then I'm going to go through the 6 stages because I think that will be really, really helpful for people to truly understand what it looks like. And I'm going to tell you what it's not as well, because I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people trying to capitalize on burnout, and they're just spreading the misinformation. And then I will also bring in why I disagree with the World Health Organization, if I may. So the way that I describe burnout is it is physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion from prolonged stress. That's it. That's what that's the way I'll describe it. The World Health Organization will describe it in a very similar way, but they'll say it's a workplace phenomenon that it only happens in the workplace, essentially.
Yeah.
Which the reason why I don't agree with that is that burnout, the only precursor to burnout is stress. There's no other precursor to it. So it's not like you go, oh, well, I'm stressed at work, so therefore I'm going to burn out. Oh, I'm having marital issues and I'm stressed in that, so something else will happen. No, the outcome will always be burnout. It just might be the stressor is
Yeah, got it.
different. But
Yeah.
you couple it together, we're a whole human being. You might be having a really great time at work, but you might be having marital issues, or you might be having work issues, marital issues, friend issues. Maybe you've got a sick parent, sick child. All of these things are going to, you're a whole human being. So you're going to feel those stresses. So that's something that I really want to get across. But it's that physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
So if we go through the 6 stages, and I'll go through this really, really quickly, but I'll talk a little bit about the symptoms just so people can go, okay, that's where I could be. So
Yeah,
essentially, we've got stage 1, which is what we
Yep.
would call excitement.
Mhm.
So with this, what's happening here is I want you to think about that bell curve again. We've talked about it a couple of times through this session. You go to the middle part, you're under optimal pressure to perform at a high level. So that's where your starting point is, which is excitement. So maybe you've got a new job, maybe you've been promoted, maybe you're starting a new business, maybe you're starting a new career, whatever it is, you've got that, you're excited. So you have all the energy. Emotionally, you're really excited and you want to perform at a high level, and mentally, you've got all the clarity in the world. You can get into flow state, you can concentrate, you can do all of those things. What happens at that stage is good habits go out the window. So maybe you stop eating healthy. Maybe you stop going to the gym. You say, oh, I'm too busy. I'll go next week. Maybe you sacrifice your sleep. You're like, you stay up late, you get up early. Maybe you start sacrificing your downtime. So you're not getting that downtime. Maybe you're sacrificing your hobbies just because you're like, well, I just really want to, prove this point, or I really need to get this done, or I really need to sink my teeth into this. Whatever the narrative is that you're telling yourself, that's what's happening. So that's stage 1. Feels great because you start to achieve. Then we kind of dabble into stage 2, which is what I call working harder. So stage 1, flow state. Everything's easy. Physically, mentally, and emotionally, you're doing awesome. You're achieving what you need to achieve. Stage 2, on the other hand, is you're still achieving the same results. What's happening is you're having to put more physical, mental, and emotional energy in to get the same results, because you can't get back into flow state, because you're lacking those resources. You're lacking that energy, whatever it is, that time, or whatever you're lacking at that point. Then what you've got is, if you've been in that stage for a period of time, no one around you, by the way, is going to notice that you're in that stage. Only you're going to know that, but you might, if you're not self-aware of that, you're not going to notice it as much. You're like, well, I'm still achieving the same goal. So I just don't feel great, but whatever. I just need to get a good night's sleep. I'll be right. Then we slip into what we would call stage 3, which is frustration. This is when the cracks are starting to show internally and externally. So during this, what we're seeing is physically, you're probably a little bit tired. We're not saying that exhaustion, that bone weary exhaustion at this stage. We're just saying you're tired. You need to have you've sacrificed your sleep too much. You're compensating with too much caffeine or whatever it is, and you're just you're getting tired. Emotionally, this is where the behavioral changes happen. You are you've maybe gone from cool, calm, and collected to being snappier. Maybe you're getting more frustrated. You're getting angrier quicker. Now, this might not happen in the workplace. This might happen at home. So you might be taking it out on your loved ones, which we all do. We've all done it. It's nothing to feel shame of. It's because we're all human beings. We all do it. We don't mean to take it out on our family, but we do. Or maybe you've gone from somebody that was really engaged, really bubbly, really outgoing, all of those things, and maybe you're starting to withdraw. You'll also notice at this stage, people will be coming to your family, will be coming to you going, hey, I haven't seen you in a little while, or your friends are going, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, let's catch up. So they're starting to notice your absence and that withdrawal. Mentally, what's going on at this stage is you can concentrate and focus, but it is taking more energy. But what you're finding is that you're making more mistakes. So you're making really, really simple mistakes. You're having to go back and do the same work again. That's sort of stage 3. This is the last stage you want to get to before you go any further, because it's easy to rectify. You probably could just implement some good habits, start to get better understand your stress response and how you respond to stress, and go from there. When you've been in that stage for a period of time, we'll go into what stage 4 is, which is illness and anxiety. So as we've discussed, this is when we start to see those physical health issues. Maybe you're starting to get sick more frequently. You're not able to overcome illnesses. Maybe you have really vague health issues. So you might be going to the doctors, going with, I'm really fatigued. I've got joint pain. I've got this really not phantom, but I've got this pain somewhere in my body. You get all your blood tests done, you get all your blood works done, you go see all the doctors, you see all the specialists, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're absolutely fine. Everything's normal. So you feel like you're a little bit crazy, but that's what's typically happening at this stage. So you've got some physical health issues going on right there. Mentally, again, that lack of concentration, that lack of focus, and emotionally, we're starting to see that anxiety creep in because you're starting to feel overwhelmed and you've not been able to sort of get that under control. So the stress has now turned into an anxiety.
Got it.
Then you go into stage 5. Stage 5 is really dangerous, which is what we would call apathy. So this is what we call the burnout depression. So it's different to clinical depression because it's not, for instance, with burnout depression, if you remove the stressor, you're going to feel fine. You're going to go back to yourself. With clinical depression, you can remove the stressor and you're still going to feel depressed. So it is a little bit different, but this is why people can get misdiagnosed with depression when realistically it's that apathy. And when we're talking about this apathy, it's not because you don't care about your job or you've just woken up one day and like, I don't care about this job, I hate this job, or I don't care about this relationship, I want to get out. It's not that. It's you don't have the capacity to care. It's because you're so overwhelmed. There's no space for anything other than this feeling that you've got, which is burnout. And then you get to stage 6, which is full-blown burnout. And what happens with full-blown burnout is you'll probably cycle between stage 4 and 5 quite frequently because they're kind of part of the same coin. So you get so exhausted, your brain and body just shut down, you start to feel better, and then you do that. But when we get to stage 6 and we get to fully burnout, your cognitive function is probably going to be taking the biggest hit. So we're talking, it's more than brain fog at this stage. It was like we were talking about at the start, the forgetfulness, the lack of concentration, the inability, like the best way to describe it, it's like your thoughts are going through molasses. And if you even try and catch it, it then turns into smoke. You can't hold on to a thought. You can be in a conversation and go, I have no idea what that person said. You can read an email and be like, I know that this says words. I know there's words on this, but I can't turn that into anything meaningful to take action with. That's what burnout is, and it is terrifying. It's not, oh, I just woke up today, I'm a little bit tired, so I'm burnt out. No, you're unable to function as a human being in society.
Yeah, I mean, oh mate, thank you so much for breaking that down. I think then what I'm realizing is that when people say that, what they're probably experiencing is about stage 3.
Stage 3, stage 4. Yep.
Yeah, right. So I'm a bit burnt out, or I'm pretty burnt out, or I definitely at the end of last year. So, all right, you tell me what level I was. So
Okay.
I was super snappy. I was exhausted physically. Mentally, I went to New Zealand and got sick straight away. Said to my mum, I was like, I'm pretty sure I caught something on the flight. I didn't catch something on the flight, let's be honest. I got to New Zealand and slept for 15 hours straight. Like, can't remember the last time I did that, right? And yeah, just kind of feelings of defeat, like this is not what I want to be doing. Like, you know, we do amazing stuff, and I'm lucky to have the business we have, right? And I was just like, why am I doing this? I get to work with one of my best mates, blah 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 blah. Like, I don't want to be here. What am I doing? What stage was I?
I would say you were cycling between 3, 4, and 5. I would actually say you got to 5.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Because you were like, what am I doing? Why don't I want to do this? You had that apathy. You love what you do. It's like you consciously know you love this, but your emotions are going, I just can't care. I would say stage 5. I would genuinely say stage 5 at that one.
Yeah, and so most of last year felt like quite, I would say, depression, because of this kind of feeling. I mean, there were some things that went on the year before which definitely didn't help. Split up with a partner, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I think in reality that was kind of just like a reflection point of like, and I don't want to turn this into a free coaching session, although thank you very much.
Go on then.
But the point being, like, I definitely recognize the depression part of it as well, of going, oh
Yes.
man, like, just I can't do this anymore. Do you know
Stage
what I mean?
5. Yeah, I think what you It's hard because when life throws so much at
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
even if it's bad stuff or even if it's good stuff, because I'll share what happened last year with me and where I got
Yeah.
to at the end of last year, because I got to stage 3 last, probably a bit, no, I'd say stage 3, maybe teetering on stage 4 last year, but it was from good
Oh,
stuff. I
okay.
had no space for anything to possibly go wrong last year.
Yeah.
But when you go through a breakup, you've got business, even though that could be a very good thing, it's taxing on time and energy.
Totally.
And so I'll share this, and maybe this will make a bit of sense to some people as well. And I actually use this framework in all different ways, but I think it might be really helpful right now. So we talked about the bell curve. I know we're kind of going on about it, but it's the best way to visualize it. So you've got optimum
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah.
So I always talk, when people go to me, it's like, well, isn't, stress a good thing? And I'm like, well, let's break it down. Let's use the right verbiage. Pressure is good,
Mm.
stress is bad. And
Mm.
the reason why I say it that way is because if we kind of go, oh, use stress or distress, our brain's just like stress. Like we just call it that, and you can trick yourself into thinking it's a good thing. That's what I
Got it.
used to do. So I'm very conscious
Got
of
it.
making
Yeah.
sure
Got
my brain doesn't try and play funny buggers with me.
it. Okay. Got it.
So if
Makes
we
sense.
talk about pressure and stress, we talk about pressure is essentially working towards a goal, target, or a deadline, whatever it is, and knowing it's completely determined by you and your own resources. So your actions, habits, and behaviors, right? So
Mm.
that's what
Mm.
pressure is. Stress on the other side, exactly the same thing, working towards the same target, deadline, goal, whatever it is. Again, it's completely determined by your own performance and your actions and behaviors and all that kind of stuff. But what's happening is you're starting to lack a resource.
Yes.
Now, there's 5 resources that you need as a human being. And I
Is
actually
this
use
is this flipping into the how we help
get into
this?
stress. This is how we go from pressure to stress. So
Got
if
it. Got it.
you
Got
look
it.
at that bell curve,
Got it.
you're getting
Yeah.
out of optimal pressure, you're going into
Yeah.
stress. You
Cool.
need 5 resources to maintain working well under pressure. 1, you need energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basic, right? Get the right habits, get enough sleep, get enough exercise, get enough good nutrition, get enough downtime, all that kind of jazz, right? The
Yeah.
second one is time. You need enough time, and time is it's kind of it's two sides. So depending on how you view it. So I
Yeah.
actually use this framework for organizations, and I use this for individuals. So time, if you're looking at it as an organization, do your employees or do you have enough time to achieve what you need to achieve with the time that's allotted for your salary? Do you have enough time? On the flip side, do you also have enough time then to have enough downtime to spend time with family, friends, get that rest, do the hobbies, do all the good habits that we just mentioned, right? So
Yep.
there's those 2 things. The third one is skills. This is again kind of a two-edged sword. So the first thing is, do you have the right skills to achieve what you want to achieve, or do you have access to gain those skills to develop? So for instance, when you set up a business, you have no idea what you're doing, right? Like
Okay.
you never know what you're doing. But then
Still
you
trying to figure it out.
learn, but you have access, so you'll network, you'll find people, you will ask
Mm.
questions, and you'll have access to those resources. If you do not have access to those resources
Yeah.
and those skills, you will burn out because you are constantly trying to run, like you're trying to sprint a marathon and you can't do it because you need the right footwear, you need the right nutrition, you need all of these things, you need those skills. Here's the other thing though. We don't want to let people fall stagnant. So if you've got a team and you're not skilled, you're not upskilling your team, they will actually go to the left-hand side of that bell curve.
Mm.
They'll actually become disenfranchised.
Yes.
So there's
Right.
that side. The fourth resource you need, support. Now that support can come from a workplace, it can come from family as well. So if you don't feel like you're supported at work or within your business, that's going to be an issue. You're going to feel like we can go into the whole array of it, like loneliness, and we can go all of that. But essentially you
Mm.
need support.
Mm.
You need support at home. If your family aren't supportive, you haven't got a supportive relationship, whatever it is, you're going to burn out. You're going to fall into that stress. It's going to be extremely stressful.
Mm-hmm.
The fifth one, which is the most important, not the most important one, but it's the one that most people get wrong, is that reward and recognition. You need to make sure that you're achieving that reward or you're getting recognized for the work that you're doing and you feel valued. This is a massive problem in the workforce
Mm-hmm.
today, and it's especially a really big issue with parents, right? If you're a parent, it's not always the most rewarding job in the moment all the time. So if there's no
Mm.
reward or recognition of how hard you're working or what you're doing, You're not getting that dopamine. You're not feeling like you're achieving. The other
Mm.
dilemma was with high achievers and high anxious achievers, like we were just talking about. You'll never ever hear the reward and you'll never accept the recognition.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, right?
So
There's
that's why those people burn out at a higher rate. Does that make sense?
makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. I think that's, I mean, because my next question was kind of, I mean, it's the typical one, right? Isn't it? It's like, okay, so what do we do about this? And I think that's kind of answering it, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like you need to tool yourselves up with, or tool yourself up with these things, these five things, which actually say, okay, have I got these resources around me to actually make sure that I can move
Yep.
myself back down the pressure curve, right? So
Yep.
make sure that I am not playing up there all the time, and that those the support one's big on oxytocin, isn't it? That's a big
Yeah.
so like having a hug, having friends around you that you can actually get to move you back down there. And I love that yeah, that sentiment, you know. I know that, I mean, I'm pretty good at it now. And as I said to you before we got on this call, like punctuating my year with stuff to make sure that I'm actually
Yeah.
going to see my family and going to see that, and like just kind of going, do you know what? Like, I read a great book, which Oliver Berkman. I like his stuff.
Oh,
4,000 Weeks,
4,000. Yes, I
and the whole
love that book. I love
the
that
whole
book.
premise is you're never going to get to the end of your to-do list, so stop trying.
Yeah, so I
I love
have
it.
this, I love it. So I actually don't believe in to-do lists. I have this thing called the power of three.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I used to do this. So when I had burnt out to the point where I like just to get out of bed and like get a coffee and have a shower was just like a little overwhelming. I had this thing where what I called the power of three to get to baseline. And this
Mm,
was to get me out of burnout, but I've taken that and now that I'm out of burnout and I can use that in sort of looking at my day and looking at the resources that I've got and then actually really making a good
yeah,
effort to actually make a to-do list where I feel like I've achieved something. So
yeah,
essentially the power of three is looking at the three things that you can do today that's going to get you a little bit closer to your goal. You can do this professionally or you can do this personally. And if you
mhm,
could only choose three things, what are those three things? What
mhm,
that does, it makes you have to prioritize. You can't just do
yeah,
some bullshit stuff that makes you feel kind of good. You have to really, really choose those three things.
yeah,
And like so I do this personally and I do this professionally. I have to do three things for myself. I have to do three
yeah,
things
nice.
professionally. So
Yeah,
and it can be, and don't get me wrong, there are going to be days where I wake up and maybe the three things that I was going to do maybe it doesn't fit with where I'm at. Like, do I have the
mm,
energy to really give that a go? Do I have the focus? Do I have the concentration? No, okay, cool. What can you actually do? What is the most important thing for you to do today? What is two
mm,
other things that you can know you can do so you still feel like you're achieving, you still feel like you're moving forward, but
mm,
you're not trying to do too much. You're not sitting there going like, oh, I've got a to-do list the length of my arm. I'm going to
yeah,
do all of that. I'm going to stay up until midnight to do it. It gives you permission to do what you need to do, get that reward and recognition. So you get that little bit of dopamine.
yeah, nice.
Um, and then you can switch off and then it creates the space for all the things that are really important, like spending time with family, spending time with friends, going to do what you need to do. That's how I handle it because
Yeah, I love that. I
otherwise,
mean,
what are you
I've
meant to
I've
do?
heard I've heard people go even less than that, right? An OGAD, one goal a day.
Yep.
So, I agree with that. And I think, I mean, you and I could spend, I think, probably another couple of hours talking about this. But yeah, it's those are such valuable. Like, I love the part about resources, right? It's like tool yourself up with these things
Yeah.
to help move yourself back down the stress curve, and then stop trying to imagine that you can do everything because you can't, right?
Yeah.
You're a one person, you're a human, and the it's not a mindset of I'm never going to do anything, is it? It's just I'm only one person. I have to focus
Hmm.
on some things that matter, right?
And it's working on those, if you're an executive of an organization, if you're a
Yeah,
CEO, if you're in the
yeah,
C-suite level, like, should you be working in the business? No, you need to be working on the top end stuff, the higher priority stuff. And if you're just getting distracted with all the little things, that's why so the I work with MDs, I work with CEOs, and I work with founders.
yeah.
The biggest reasons why those people burn out is because they're getting involved in things that they shouldn't be getting involved in, and they can't do the really high, high concentration things that they need to do to make sure that the business is moving in the right direction.
Got it.
because they become stagnant. So they become like they're putting out spot fires. They're focusing on things that really aren't going to move the needle for the organization. It's just sort of solving problems that if you actually worked on the bigger stuff, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, got it.
And so a lot of the times it's restructuring the way you work and restructuring potentially your organization, depending on the level of your organization, to make sure it works for you, not against you.
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right. Give me your top three things. So, power of three, what are your top three things that people should be focusing on to ensure that they're moving themselves back down that stress curve?
Okay.
Pressure
So
curve.
I'm the pressure curve, the pressure performance curve. First things first, the quickest wins to make you feel a bit better so you have the space and capacity to deal with stress more effectively. You need to make sleep a priority. So if you are really, really struggling to sleep, it impacts
Radio as well.
everything.
Mm,
It impacts everything, your ability to concentrate, your emotions.
mm,
It also impacts if you are able to work out. It impacts your
mm,
food choices. It
mm,
impacts your ability to feel like you can have downtime. So sleep. You
mm.
have to try and get 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep. So the best ways to do that is make sure you're not drinking alcohol before bed, making sure that you're not drinking caffeine after midday, making sure you have a routine. So get your sleep right. That is the first thing I do with every single one of my clients is
Nice.
I ended up becoming a little bit of a sleep coach, but I'm okay with that if that's the one thing we focus on. The second thing, because once you get your sleep done, the exercise and the diet actually comes. Like I know I'm a nutritionist, but at the end of the day, I promise you, you know what you have to eat. You
Yeah,
know what is good for you. It's just
yeah,
what's getting in the way. Like,
yeah, for
so I
sure.
don't want to spend too much time talking about diet. The second thing, once you've got the capacity to manage stress, you need to start unpicking how you respond to stress and getting a bit more self-awareness around what stress is for you. So for instance, what I mean by that is I'm somebody that will never know that I'm stressed until I'm kind of towards the end point of stress where my body's
Mm,
like, hey, here, have a cold sore, here, get a bit sick. And then I'm like, a
yes.
little bit stressed. Like I won't recognize it. So actually start understanding how you relate to stress, how you respond to stress, or how you react to stress, and start looking at, is this working for me or is this working against me?
Nice.
The
Okay.
third thing, this is really deep, and I'm so sorry for anyone out there, but that if this is too deep, but you need to start understanding your belief systems because your belief systems have gotten you to where you are right now and why you burn out. So your belief systems around stress, work, how you perceive yourself, perfectionism, families, all of that,
Yeah.
that's going to be what's adding that pressure. And it's a sneaky, cheeky one with the second one there, where you could sort of do the second one, understand how you relate to stress, and then you go to the next point and go, okay, cool, where did that thought come from? Where does that belief come from?
Yeah, yeah,
And
totally.
working from that. So that's
I,
my three. They're not quick things. The sleep is the quickest one you'll get if you can get
yeah.
it right.
I don't think beliefs is deep at all. I mean, it is, but I
Good.
think it's uh, we need to rigorously assess where the thoughts that we have are coming from.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest ways to do that is just argue against yourself, right? Like, okay, be a lawyer, and that thought came, and I need to do this. Do you?
Yeah.
Says
Do you know
who?
what I do? So I write down all my thoughts.
Yeah.
So I've suffered from anxiety. I always say I came out of the womb. I promise you there's a point to this. I came out of the womb anxious. I've just always been, I don't like to say I'm an anxious person because once you say I'm an anxious person, you don't think there's any hope. But I was a very anxious person and I believed I was a very anxious person for a long period of time, which meant I never looked for ways not to be anxious. But when I was in the midst of burnout and I had severe anxiety, and we're talking like panic attacks every second day,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
they were awful. I
Mm.
remember sitting down, I was in Australia and I was getting ready to go for a walk because, going for a walk is meant to be relaxing. I remember sitting there, I was putting on my shoes and I was like, okay, cool, you're going to go to a national park. What if there's a snake? Okay, cool. So I was going through like the what ifs, and then I'm like, okay, well, what if I roll my ankle? There's no cells, like there's no mobile phone service there. How I call someone? I was like, well, we have to do. And I was going through all these like what ifs, and I remember and I was like 2 hours later, as I'm trying to put my shoes on, I was like, Jesus Christ, my anxiety is like a door-to-door salesman. No shade to door-to-door salesman, you have a really hard job, but I was like, Oh my God, my anxiety is like a door-to-door salesman coming to
Yeah.
my door selling me inappropriate what ifs, survival
Mm.
techniques that are outdated and unneeded. The minute I realized that, I was like, I'm going to listen to what my anxiety is going to tell me because you can't shut the door and it'll just keep coming at you, keep knocking at you louder. I
Mm.
wrote down everything that my anxiety said to me. And then what I did was I'd look at it and go, what's the fact and what's the fiction? So what's the
Mm.
actual fact and what's the
Mm.
story I'm telling myself?
Yeah.
And that was actually the most helpful thing because it was like you said, it's like, I have to do this. Do you? It's like, well, no, I just want to get this done. Okay,
Yeah.
but why? And you
Yeah.
can start lawyering yourself, but you're doing it as a
Yes.
third party rather
Yep.
than, and you've dissociated yourself
Yeah.
rather
It
than,
objectifies it, right?
it
Yeah.
objectifies it rather than what I say, like buying the thought and
Yeah.
believing the thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of sense. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's cognitive behavioral therapy at its finest, right? Like argue
Yeah.
against yourself. So yeah, nice one. Katie, thank you so much. This has been
You're welcome.
extremely informative. Really grateful for your time. Where can people find you?
So the best place to find me is LinkedIn. So just type in Katie Maycock or Get Your Shit Together. You'll come across me in some in some way on LinkedIn. Or you can go to my website where I've got a lot of blogs on this. I'm going to be posting a lot more blogs on this, which is Gist Wellbeing. So GYST
Get your shit together.
wellbeing.com. So it's
Nice.
Get Your
I love
Shit Together, but the acronym. Because some
it.
corporate
Nice.
companies don't like to hire me when I've got Get Your Shit Together in my name. So I'm like, it's just well-being, which is
Love
just the
that.
acronym of Get Your Shit Together.
Oh, look, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, all good. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Braver Leaders podcast. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a fellow leader who needs to hear it. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode, and check out our free resources as well on braverleaders.com, because great leadership starts with action. We'll see you next time.